You're live.
We are back. We'll give it a couple seconds for people to get on, Steve. Bought some information with me today.
Oh my goodness.
I'm looking.
Wow. We don't need a Bible today.
We don't need a Bible today, man.
Shizers.
That's just the way that it is. Anyways, an episode dropped on
I saw.
Monday. Yesterday.
Contending for the faith.
Yeah. There you go. So you actually did watch it. Sometimes when I ask you, you're like, yeah, I know. But you don't tell me the title of it. So that does mean that you actually watched it. So yeah, I was talking about contending for the faith. So great episode. And I'm looking forward to part 2 next week. But that's every Monday, 6:30 p.m.
Yep.
For everybody who is a subscriber to the Righteous Unity YouTube channel. You get the notification. Bing. You go check it out. But today's not Monday. And it's not 6:30.
We're supposed to start at 7:45.
Yeah.
Here it is 7:55.
No, it's not. 7:52. Relax. And we've been on for like 2 minutes. So technically we was 5 minutes late.
Anyways.
Calm down, Steve. So what happens on Tuesdays? Because
we go live. We have a live discussion about Christian topics or themes centered around Christian topics that we want to stimulate people's thinking. You can disagree with us, which is perfectly okay. Share something in the text box there so that you can ask a question or share your thoughts. Push back on maybe what Jack and I are saying. We might push back on what you're saying, but that's having a healthy dialogue. So this is what we're about. So we've been dealing with deconstructing our faith. Correct?
I'm listening. This is Tuesdays. You're supposed to be running the show. So I'm listening to you. Run the show.
What's going on over here?
You're this distracted? On Mondays, I don't get distracted like this. And I have to deal with a lot. So please, if not, I'll run Tuesday and I'll run this.
You're good.
So please talk, because I'll take over.
This guy, you'll have to be on time to take over. Anyways, we're talking about deconstructing the faith, and we started off dealing with the authenticity of Scripture. How reliable is the Bible, right?
Right.
So we went through some areas that we use to help guide us in identifying if the Bible is reliable or not. Now, a lot of people are skeptical about the Bible, and they'll come up with certain opinions or they'll make certain claims why they feel the Bible is unreliable. And so if somebody's going to be committed to defending the truth, defending the Word of God, they're going to have to learn how to recognize the concerns that a skeptic has regarding the reliability of the Bible. Now, there are scholars who have created a process for people to investigate the process and come to a logical conclusion to see for themselves if the Bible is reliable. And that's some of the stuff that Jack and I have been dealing with regarding this subject, is to talk about that system or those specific tests used to deal with the reliability of the Bible.
Real quick, is the door open?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And going back to if anybody had any questions, we have been getting, I don't know if you've been going back and looking at any of these videos on the YouTube channel, but I know you have some on your Facebook channel, but there's been some comments and questions on the YouTube channel. I hope we've answered all of Tom's questions. I don't know if we did.
I think there's one that he had. I was trying to remember it.
Well, hopefully we'll get there. Tom, if you're watching this or if you catch it on the playback, restate your question. But I did answer one question and another one popped up. So I'll get back to you, person in the comment. I think their name is Nutty Squirrel. So I'll get back to you.
Not Nutty Squirrel.
Yes.
Oh my
Very intelligent person. Great questions. So anyways, continue on as any questions or thoughts come to mind. But I do want to make this point clear, that our goal in addressing this, because as we talked about before, deconstructing the faith has been something that was turned into something negative. It's about breaking down something, investigating something, measuring it up against the standard. So some of us have been raised a certain kind of way, and we just want to, versus we just listen to something because of somebody's title, position, or family member. And so deconstructing is not always a bad thing, but what we've seen take place is this falling away from the faith. People like, yeah, I'm done. I can't believe the Bible because of this, this, and that. And so if you have any questions or things out there that you know have caused you to be like, this is why I'm done with the Bible, you know, throw it out there, leave your comment. That's what we kind of want to do. But I wanted to state something that I don't think has been stated yet, is that our job in discussing deconstructing or deconstruction of your faith, this here are the evidence, the arguments, the claims, is not a end all be all in that moment. To the arguments that we're working through is for you to have all the tools necessary for you to then try out and test out everything that we're saying, so that you then can go in and say, hey, I followed the same path and logic that you had. All right, cool. I deem this to be historical enough. Now I'll read in and dig into this. Ultimately, yes, the goal is to want to see one saved, but that's not the point here. The point here is to really show how historically that the Bible is a reliable historical document. That's the point here. And I can't make that decision for you, is what I wanted to state. Me or Pastor Steve can't make that. All we can do is provide certain tests that you can check out to see if we're saying this correct or not. Certain things that as we dive deeper, you can test and be able to fact check or not. But ultimately, it is up to you to take this information and then decide whether or not this was enough for you. And I think that's important, because
it's very important, because I think this is why a lot of churches, and let me specify, I think why a lot of Pentecostal charismatic churches and even some traditional churches don't like dealing with what we're talking about tonight, the tests of the reliability of Scripture, or the reliability of the Bible. Because to your point, we're not here to try to save someone right now. We're trying to help them to see that the tools to become saved are reliable.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of people get the disconnect, is that to spend time helping somebody recognize the reliability and the credibility of the tool God uses to give information for one to be saved is as vital as the saving message itself. Because if I'm reading something in black and white that literally maps out how one gets saved, but I don't agree or I don't give credit to the writings that I'm reading, even though I'm believing in the source the information is coming from. Absolutely. So we spend the time giving credibility to the source of where the information is coming from. That individual now really are reading the information and feels more comfortable based on the credibility where the information is coming from. Now they might spend more time engaging the message of Jesus Christ, death, burial, and resurrection, because they recognize the credibility of those who speak about it is worth listening to and taking into consideration, and hopefully believe in it.
Agreed.
And I think churches need to see that they need to validate the importance of spending time getting people to see the importance and the tools that are used to help see the reliability of the Scriptures.
And to know that the Spirit of God is still working
right
through that.
And that
even though you don't see, even though you have assumed the Spirit of God in this emotional sense and need to see that type of atmosphere taking place, even in these conversations right now, God is working on an honest person's heart. Because if you're not honest, this is a waste of time. If you're just a troll who wants to get questions in, it's a waste of time.
Mhm.
But only the honest person who's genuine is this going to matter or deal with. So, with that being said, narrator, are we good? With that being said, I think we should probably spend. Well, actually, I'm gonna let you.
Is it so? Let's deal with the 3 tests, right, of the reliability.
Probably not gonna get through all 3.
No,
but
no. I don't. I know
Yes.
we're not.
Yeah.
But we want to talk about the 3 actual tests that have been created by scholars, not even believing scholars, but scholars who believe in the historical documents and how reliable are any historical documents, not just the Bible, but any
Right.
historical documents. Like when we talked about before, the Gallic Wars written by Caesar Augustus, or the Poetics written by Aristotle. These tests are for those documents as well, to see how reliable are they, to take from what is being claimed has been written by either Caesar or Aristotle, and validating those writings as if they actually came from those individuals. So the 3 tests are, the first one is the bibliography. How do you say
the bibliographical.
the bibliographical? Then there's the external test and the internal tests that are used in describing the validity of the Bible. So the first one is something I think we've already kind of like touched on, but we can go through a little bit more, which is the bibliographical.
Oh my goodness, this guy here.
Say it one more time.
Bibliographical
Bibliographical.
or bibliographical.
All right, whatever. We kind of touched on it a little bit because that basically deals with the autograph versus the manuscripts, and how reliable are the manuscripts in comparison to the actual autograph or the original writings, which there are no original writings of any ancient documents. So what we have is manuscripts. And then from the first manuscript found to the latest the latest manuscript found, what is the differences? Are there any differences? And if there are differences, how critical are those differences to dealing with the essence of the message? You with me?
I'm with you.
So we kind of dealt with that. So if you want to go through that a little bit, but then we'll go to the external sources of how they use to test the validity of the Bible or ancient texts, and then we'll go with the internal test if we even get that far.
Yeah, probably won't. But that's good though, because what we're now establishing once again are terms to get us to understand things. Any type of historical text goes through this method of historiography. And from that, when you want to test the credibility of something, the reliability of something, as you stated, we go through the bibliographical test, the internal test, and the external test. And so
on any historical document.
Yes, any.
We're not just here to talk about the Bible, even though we are, but any historical document.
Yeah. And I think what tends to happen with the Bible is because of like miracles and miraculous things, people are like, they just like shun it. Like, yo, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Seriously? The problem is that we forget that some of the same reason in which you reject the Bible for, you're going to have to now hold that same type of thinking standard to and criterions to other historical texts. So like we talked about before, Alexander the Great, none of us were there.
Yep.
None of us seen Plato. None of us seen Aristotle. None of us seen Socrates. So why are you just this person who's just like, I agree with Aristotle said. I agree with Tacitus. I agree with Pliny the Younger, Pliny the Elder. Why are you just so convinced about something that you weren't there for? What are you utilizing to say, I wasn't there, but I believe this to be sound and historical?
Incredible.
And so I think, like I said, us trying to provide at least a standard to say, hey, that method that we're trying to get you to is called historiography. And here's some tests. So last week, I talked about 2 questions that need to be answered in order for somebody to deem the Bible to be reliable. And the first question was, which we'll deal with the bibliographical test, is do we have what the scribes wrote or penned down? Do we have the essence of it? We know we don't have the paper, but do we have the essence of what was said?
The original message.
Yes, the original message, not the text, but do we have that? And then the second important question is it true and accurate? Because we can take a document and we can have what they wrote, and it's just a bunch of made up stories. It doesn't make sense. So what's the point of like saying we got 99% of these myths that somebody wrote, but they're not true? And so it's important to have those two questions. So dealing with that, I say all that to say, let's address the bibliographical test a little bit. So it determines whether the text of the historical record has been transmitted accurately, which we addressed. We look at the original, right? Then we go and get a bunch of manuscripts. The more manuscripts you have, it doesn't mean you're accurate, because you can have a bunch of inaccurate things.
The number is not what makes it accurate.
Exactly. The number doesn't make it accurate. But what it does do is state that the more that I have of something, the more that I can begin to see consistency and things that don't line up. So if I have 10,000 manuscripts and 9,800 say something verbatim a certain kind of way, these other 200 I know, okay, we don't have to worry about pinning this because these 9,800 manuscripts have it pinned this way. We can assume and know it's more plausible. This is the way the original text was written based upon that.
And again, remember what we're saying. It's not just for the scriptures. They use this test for all ancient documents. The thing about the difference between the scriptures and the manuscripts of the scriptures and the manuscripts of other writings is that the Holy Scriptures have more manuscripts than any ancient document in history.
Right. Which the question becomes, and two, which we're going to get into. There's another part about the bibliographical test. It doesn't just deal with how many manuscripts.
Yep.
So if you wrote something in 2022, Steve, and then in 2300, right, somebody takes a copy of this, and in 2400, somebody else says that, hey, and they start penning and copying. What somebody who's a thinker would say is, well, were you around Steve? Like, were you around him enough to know, like, what he's originally saying to pin it down? Because if he's in 2022, he's already like 50 something. He's probably not going to make it to 2300. Who did you talk to? Were you around his family?
Right.
When you start to look at some of these books of antiquity, you start to question, how do you even know these things are accurate considering the gap? So we talked about Homer, right? Homer's Iliad, 9th or 8th century BC. And so a lot of they did this updated bibliographical test because obviously, and this is up in 2014, so it's even more updated now, where there's this claim that it used to be only 643 manuscripts of Homer's Iliad. Now that has upped to about 1,800 plus. Okay.
Which is fine.
Yeah, no, it's fine, because as you keep going and looking and reading these texts, what you'll see is that, well, then the Bible upped as well too. I was trying to figure out and get the earliest.
While he's looking again, just to
the time gap from. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Well, again, what we're doing is you have to see what he's trying to address in regards to the number of manuscripts. It's not even just the number of manuscripts, because collectively I might have 22,000 manuscripts, but I may have 3,000 years ago only had 15,000. Then as we continue to find discoveries of more, what we're seeing then is the earliest manuscript to the latest manuscript. Are there any discrepancies? And what he's showing us here is the time frame between the earliest found manuscript to the latest found manuscript. Are there discrepancies? Are there differences? Or are there accuracies that help validate and make validity of the text? Correct?
Correct.
So go ahead with Homer.
Yeah. And as you pointed out, you're going to find more manuscripts, more people copying the manuscripts. The real question should be, after you get a bunch, after you see how many manuscripts there are, the time gap. So going back to Homer, who wrote the Iliad around the 9th or 8th century BC, written like we said, the 8th or 9th century. The earliest copies didn't start floating around until 400 BC, but it was written in the 9th or 8th century. The question becomes, that's over 400 plus years. Who did you have that you were talking to to be able to pin and know that? That's where you start to look at this bibliographical test to say, wait a minute, like, who's your witnesses? Who are your people that, because this is about transmission.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the Israelites were very, 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 like, that was their thing, to be able to have oral transmission. That was their community mindset of thinking. So once again, we're going 400 years of a time gap. All right. That's with probably the most manuscripts of a book of antiquity. So let's speed this up to Herodotus. Has something called history, and
another historical
document written around 484 to 425 BC. Earliest copies not until AD 900.
That's over 1,300 years.
1,300 years.
That's over 1,300 years from when the individual existed who wrote this before the first manuscript was discovered. 1,300-year time gap.
And so there's now 49 papyrus fragments of this, when it used to be 8. So people have found more of this, but 1,300-year time gap. So the bibliographical test, we're not just testing how many manuscripts, which will allow you to see discrepancy, but also the time gap. So now let's do one more, and then let's go to the Bible. All right. And then we'll take any questions or comments.
If there's any.
So then you have Plato. Plato wrote 7 tetralogies, as they're called. And so, well, it's not listed here. But anyways, around 428 BC to about 347 BC. So they don't really have a good time frame of when this was even written. But anyways, the oldest surviving manuscript was copied by John the calligrapher in 895
AD.
Yeah. So
again, that's 1,200 years.
Yeah. And so you ask yourself, this is Plato. This is somebody that you look up to, and look at how far. Now, like we said, they have 210 manuscripts. So, a good number, I guess. And then, but your gap is huge. So
why? So let me ask you something. When you keep saying this gap, why is the gap and referencing the gap so important to history?
The bibliographical test, because like I said,
talking about the gap. So I want y'all to understand what I'm asking him. I want him to explain to y'all why the gap from the manuscript, or from the autograph to the manuscript, that gap. Why, or what does that say to a scholar while looking at the reliability of that text?
Because the scholar wants to know, is this the words of the person? Mm-hmm. Is this the original message? If you're 4 centuries past a date, 8 centuries, 12 centuries, you never came in contact with this person.
That person at 12 centuries later never came in contact with the original author.
Who's living 1,200 years? Who's living 800 years?
Again,
who's living 400?
This is for the
I know.
audience.
I'm saying. I'm in this mindset of, that's why it's so critical to be able to see what it is that you are, in your own bias, like, what are you laying hold to that you're like, I accept this, but I don't accept something else.
And what premise are you disagreeing with this test?
Yes.
Or the conclusion of the test.
The further the gap, the more room for error and discrepancy.
Total.
So with that being said, let's go to the New Testament.
Which is considered, as much as you may personally disagree with the Bible or the New Testament, all we're doing is looking at it as a historical document. And the test it went through, like other historical documents have gone through. We're just showing you how the test is used to establish credibility or reliability of a historical document. So with the New Testament, which is considered a historical document.
This would have been a whole lot better if I just turned to this page. So
because you could see it better.
Well, I was going through the breakout, but they have a better chart. So anyways, the new, just looking at the New Testament, the amount of Greek New Testament manuscripts are 5,838, more than any of
Yep.
just off of just
Yep.
Greek New Testament
Yep.
manuscripts. Then we have Greek New Testament early translations, which are 18,524 of these manuscripts.
Mhm.
And then with the Old Testament, we have 42,000 manuscripts. So now let's talk time gap. Well, in the Greek New Testament manuscripts, the date that they were written, which we'll have to get into, was from 50 to 100 AD.
50 to 100 AD. And what the authors penned was about the individual called Jesus Christ and his teachings he spoke to the people with.
Yeah. So date it was originally written, they're saying penned by a scribe or whoever, was from 50 to 100 AD. So we're talking Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, 50 to 100 AD.
And again, keep in mind, if Jesus died at 33 and a half years, as scholars agree, that
Right.
he existed and he did die. So if 33 AD and the first written manuscript, not the autograph, but the manuscript would give us literally under 20 years difference from the time of his death, burial, and resurrection and the apostles going out, being the eyewitnesses in their account, to the first manuscript.
No, from the autograph.
From the autograph.
Yeah. The date written would be 50 to 100 AD. Yeah.
Yes.
So the manuscript, the earliest copy we have is 130 AD. So taking the earliest original, we would be 50.
Got it.
From a time gap.
Got it.
The latest, we would be 80 years. But that's enough to be able to say somebody there would have known, would have seen something, or would have been able to be in contact with that based upon the time gap. So once again, date written, original autograph, 50, because they're different authors. And then the copy of that, the earliest that we have is AD 130. So either 50 years with the earliest or 80 years latest. Nothing comes close to that. The earliest of these books of antiquity is a 400-year time gap. We're talking Pliny the Elder's Natural History. You're talking Tacitus Annals, which a bunch of Rome information that we just accept has a 750 to 950 time gap. Caesar's Galactic Wars, like you said, 950 time gap. The question really becomes, looking at the Bible, we beat out any other book of antiquity from the time gap from the original to the manuscript, and we have the most manuscripts. Just off of that, not saying that 100% makes it reliable, but just off of that, though, you would have to say it's more credible than any other book of antiquity based upon the bibliographical test.
So that's the credibility of the Bible. Again, for those people who feel like connections unreliable, crazy. For those who just want to question the Bible because you have your own biases and you're just trying to fight and find a way to look for discredibility on the Bible, we're not here to deal with that. We're talking about those who sincerely choose not to believe the Bible because they don't believe in the credibility of the Bible, but we're giving people information on how to use the proper tests to give yourself more of a comfortability level of recognizing the Bible is as credible as any other ancient document that we accept for information. And so that's one piece. Now, how much have you read on regarding, now that you have all of the manuscripts, or all the manuscripts you do have, when you size them up one by one, you put them all next to each other, right? The one that's dated the earliest to the latest. And between the two, you see literally very little discrepancies, maybe 20 discrepancies out of the whole text, right? You with me?
I'm listening.
Oh, he wasn't listening.
I am with you. I'm trying to get to your question. Is your question, how much of a discrepancy do we have with all the
because
manuscripts?
People will say, wait a minute, I know there's contradictions in the Bible because I've read them.
And that's fine. I think that I'm probably going to say something that probably a lot of Christians probably don't want to hear, but it's good that you're seeing that out of all these manuscripts that we have, that there's some discrepancies.
Explain though why, like what discrepancies?
Like if there is
word, like just to say a letter spell something, or numbers, like some one place says 70 people, the other place says 75 people. The thing is that it still validates that the people existed. It validates the location, it validates the time frame, and it validates the actual event those people were in. All of those are still the same, but the only difference is one of them said 70, the other one said 75. That's a discrepancy we as a true believer can live with, because that number does not say the Bible is unreliable. And what it's saying is it's actually given more credibility because of the human element that man wrote, not inspired by man, but man wrote it inspired by God. And even though there might be a discrepancy like that, all of the other content found in the documents all still say the same thing in essence. Make sense?
Right. And so going back and to piggyback off of that, that's why I'm saying with more of the manuscripts that you have, first of all, you would have a person who would a critic would say, you mean to tell me out of 40 something thousand manuscripts, everybody penned the same thing exactly correct?
Right.
They would actually look at that as a conspiracy. You're just trying to make sure this was controlled. To actually be able to have manuscripts that mostly contain the same thing, but you see, if we say Jesus wept last night, and somebody says the night that Jesus wept last, or like you see the changing of the order, or early in the morning he wept, or you base it based upon the more manuscripts that you have and the consistency of that. So like I said, for me, if I see 42,000, we have 42,000 manuscripts and there are some discrepancies, that's good. What I'm looking at is the consistency of it. And from the discrepancy to the consistency, what has really changed? And you're looking at things like a number. You're looking at things like, oh, they said morning here when it should have said day here, but the event existed, the person existed. So those are the things that you're that you look at and that you find. And there's sources and places where you can look this up to validate and actually look at some of these like scrolls and text. So we'll try to put that in the chat when you get a chance. But it's very good to actually be able to see these things and look at this as well.
We good over there? Ain't nobody saying nothing tonight.
They're like, no, we're good. We're straight. But I think that's important, though. I think that once again, in order, we always talk about if you're going to tear down somebody's house, you have to be willing to build them another one. And I think a lot of times people like to try or attempt to tear down Christianity, but what they're not understanding is now you have to build your own house. What is the standard now? Because if you're like, oh no, I want something that every single manuscript is accurate. I want something that, I want something before the 50-year time gap. I want something. All right, cool. Now you remove Christianity off all that
for that criteria. On that criteria.
Exactly.
So once you use your criteria for removing something, that's the criteria for every book you will ever read again. And you can't do that. You'll be left reading nothing.
Absolutely nothing. You wouldn't have anything.
You wouldn't have anything.
So
of historical documents, anyways.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of the gist of the bibliographical test where we're at. Oh, we're at 30 something minutes, so we only got about another 10 minutes.
That's
people's times and mine.
So
let's just probably just keep focusing on that.
Well, let's review, because again, you have to train your mind with understanding these tools that Jack and I are sharing with you to help put it in a sentence for yourself, to put it together in a package so that when you're challenged, you as a believer, and if you're challenged by somebody who is a skeptic, and again, in their heart, they're just skeptical, and okay, they're skeptical. They want to question God. They want to question the reliability of God. That's awesome. That's like awesome. If they're genuinely seeking and they want to know, and they're just like, yeah, I'm not just going to buy this like that. You're not going to sell me that easy. I want to know some information. That's awesome. What we're trying to do is equip individuals to know how to think and engage in that conversation without sounding religious, without sounding like a robot saying something that, has been passed down for so many times by your pastor, your grandparents, whoever, and it's not authentic. It's not answering that person's question. So for us, we feel it's very important to be able to give people information, to let them have an opportunity by using the tools that we're giving them to work through the obstacles they have in their head regarding the credibility of the Bible and why they're not willing to accept what the Bible is saying right now. And that's okay if they're willing to go through all the things that we've shared to work through the premise or work through the standards that they're using in regarding what fits their criteria of a reliable document. And once we work through that and they're honest with themselves, we'll be able to hopefully get them to understand and come to a reasonable conclusion that the test that we're offering them is very reliable, credible, and it gives them an opportunity for themselves to work through their own challenges and maybe realize the Bible is credible. Maybe not believing in God yet,
Right.
but at least they can say plausibly, this Bible is very credible. And so now they can move forward dealing with the other now myths that they have in their head. But at least they can say, oh, you know what? I'm comfortable reading the Bible now. Let me see what this is saying and let it deal with me. You know what I'm saying?
Agreed. The last thing that I wanted to mention too is that how many different languages the different languages that the manuscripts are written into with the Bible is very unique. We're talking about having Greek manuscripts, Armenian manuscripts. They even have Coptic manuscripts because apparently Greek eventually took over Egypt at a certain point in time. So now there are Coptic papyrus fragments that even show things. So the Bible is also unique in the sense that even different languages of these like manuscripts, you're not just going to find it in Arabic, just being like with one you're going to see different manuscripts in that. And like I said, I'm going to make sure that we put in the YouTube chat, also in the Facebook chat, a place for us to be able to, or a place for a person to look up the counts of scrolls and manuscripts, because we're not just making this.
Yeah, you can research this yourself.
You can look up to see the counts of scrolls and manuscripts, and this is how antiquity works. There was a question addressing was it Matthew 23 or 27 about the tomb opening up with Jesus and a bunch of people resurrecting.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, without getting too deep into that discussion, what a lot of people don't understand, which makes the Bible so unique, is that a lot of these books of antiquity, you don't have many writers at this time writing about things. A lot of times, like, we live in this now moment where we're like, well, if a big event like this happened, why don't we see so many people writing about it? But when you look at these books of like in antiquity, you only see really Josephus outside of you see Josephus as a Jew writing about it, but outside of that, you don't really see anybody else really writing about it, minus the people in the Bible. What other people do is they make reference of Christians who are writing about something else. So when you're asking about if he was seen by all these 500 people and all these people, why didn't they write about it? But now measure that, go back, date yourself back into this time frame. When are we seeing a bunch of authors right? Give me a historian around that time frame that's writing about that around that time frame. Mm-hmm. You're not, because you don't want to listen to Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Josephus, you may want to listen to, but give me because remember, a historian, somebody that is credible that's writing this.
Right.
We forget about that. In our minds, we're like, it should be about 500 people then who can write this. Really, was 500 people writing that back? It's not like how we have journalists nowadays or people who are doing that. Right. So we have to also, I want to close on that thought process, is you have to put yourself back in the time element and time frame of what is going on back then. You can't move up now in 2022 in that mindset and worldview and just think like, all right, well, if this was seen to everybody, like we would have had this on social media, somebody would have. This is not how this works. How many historians back then do you see writing about multiple different,
Right.
Writing about the same thing?
And you're saying that on the premise of somebody wanting to argue, why isn't there more people writing about it back then? When in all actuality, again, if that's your criteria, you have to now spread that criteria
Around
across
to all these other
all the
texts
historical documents,
that
which you will not see. So therefore, you can't hold Christianity hostage to your this simple little criteria test you want to create for yourself. And if you do, again, we're not saying you can't, but make sure you're honest to use the same criteria across all historical documents. And I think that's where a lot of people, and again, if you're honest with yourself, you can blindly, with your volition, with your will, you can will yourself into still wanting to believe the way you want to believe when there's absolutely no evidence to what you're believing. You can just simply still will yourself to keep believing something that you think is there when it's not there. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you're saying that's a valid statement that there should be 500 writers also speaking about what happened during Jesus' day.
Mm-hmm.
And you can keep thinking that and believe that and expect that to actually be good information to live by for a test to see. But because of your own bias, you'll use that to hold Christianity hostage so that you'll give yourself a pass from not being obligated to see how credible the Bible actually is and have to face your own guilt of being biased against the Bible.
Right. And I think that's the reality.
That's the reality.
There's definitely hypocrisy in how we judge and measure the Bible versus other books of antiquity or other just historical documents. So we don't have any questions. No comments.
Quiet night.
Very, very, very quiet night.
I think we were boring tonight.
Probably.
Talking about too much data. Data.
Well, next week we'll actually get to talking about some
more data.
Yeah, but it'll at least be sources of people who didn't rock with the Bible.
More data.
We're gonna try to dive into some external
but it's more data.
And give you their titles and who they were and how they didn't rock with Christianity and yet they mentioned Christianity. And
with data.
Yeah, with the data.
I'm just saying you got to work through it. So I mean, hey, this is what we're about. If you want to liven it up, ask a question. Throw a question at us.
So yeah, throw your questions in the comment section. We'll be looking at it throughout the week, and next week we'll pick up talking about the external tests and maybe give it a quick review on inerrancy very quickly.
Is there something you would like our guests to do?
I would like our guests to subscribe to the Righteous Unity YouTube channel. That's UNITEE. Yeah, subscribe. Click the notification bell. We have some very, very great episodes that drop every Monday at 6:30 p.m. We're up to about 48 episodes. So I know for sure you'll like at least 2 or 3 episodes that get dropped. And then every Tuesday we're here, man, 7:45. We're on this series.
7:45. He said it. 7:45.
Yeah, and we're on this series, deconstructing your faith, getting you to really think about why you believe what you believe, and really trying to provide some answers to some people who may be like, yo, why do you believe in that crazy book? So hopefully tonight, looking at part 4, you'll see like, all right, I may take this a little bit serious. But remember, be honest. If you're not going to be honest, don't even waste your time and your energy. Be honest. Be a person who wants to at least give this a chance. And then from there, if you don't agree with it, then at least tell us your reasons why, and then we can build from there. But we want to make sure that we check you out. Well, you check us out next Tuesday. Anything else you want to say? Data?
Appreciate y'all. I look forward to sharing more data with you next Tuesday. But it's going to be good. It's good. This is a good discussion. So make sure you tune in, share it with your friends, tell other people about our podcast. Let them know that, if they have questions about Christianity, they don't rock with Christianity, that's cool. Still get on and watch. Throw some questions out there for us to have a good dialogue between each of us. So listen, appreciate y'all. Thank you for following us, watching us, and spend some time with us. Y'all take care. God bless.
God bless.